You know, the lobbying goes on. It goes on. It's a pervasive industry. They have access to the lawmakers, the legislators, the MPs. But MPs are over 21. They have the interests and the welfare of their constituents at heart. So surely all that the lobbying industry is doing is getting the important information to those lawmakers efficiently and cost effectively.
But the most important point, I think, is that actually MPs are really not that important when it comes to lobbying. Most of the lobbying consultancies spend more of their time targeting real decision makers, that's the civil servants and the ministers who take the decisions. So MPs have become progressively less important as we move to a presidential style government, as we move towards a government which is more run by the corporations through direct access to the multinational chairman's group to number 10 or through any number of lobbying groups, which takes me to the other question, which is who you define as lobbyists. We tend to focus on discussions like this on lobbying consultancies, and yes, they're a problem, it seems to me, but not only the lobbying consultancies, the think tank through the Foreign Policy Centre is for the interests of in effect its clients, they're called sponsors in the think tank world. But there's a whole series of other organisations which are funded by corporations and special interests to promote their interests. And I know today the Co-op is taking what might be described as a bold step of publishing its expenditure on trade associations and lobbying groups for the first time. I remember potential to read through all these, but there's quite a large number of organisations here. None of these would be described as a lobbying consultancy. But these are all organisations, trade associations and think tanks and the like, funded by corporations in order to influence decision making. They need to be captured as well. We need to have a wider definition of lobbying, including accountants and lawyers as well, where they're involved with lobbying, and all of that needs to be disclosed. So it's not just a question of us targeting lobbying consultancies. We think they're a problem, yes, but it's a much wider question than that. It's the pervasive influence, particularly of corporations, on the political process.
I agree with you on the revolving door and ministers taking. I think that there should be much bigger delay anyway before ministers find such employment. I disagree with you a bit on. Sure, lobbyists target special advisors, they target ministers, but Parliament does matter. For example, gambling. Massive amounts of money was spent by gambling companies. In fact, if you came to conference 5 years ago, it would be absolutely full of gambling companies, mainly with South African or American accents with their clients coming around here. You know, never was so much money spent for so little purpose at the end as the number of super casinos came down. And I'm a gambler, by the way, but I was a sceptic about the super casinos. They came down from no maximum to 8 to 4 to 2 to 1, and that was Parliament. And Parliament saying no, really. And sure, I think it's a function of big majorities, to be honest, and I think that's, well, I don't think our big majority is there necessarily for keeps. So I don't not Parliament completely. Yes, companies themselves, their lobbying activities are of interest, but I just think that why the Nolan Committee, particularly, I'll finish on this, the Nolan Committee particularly said, for example, that MPs and peers shouldn't have any financial relations with multi-client lobbyists, was because of the sort of web of interests that were potentially there, and you couldn't be sure who they were working for or seeking to represent. So my understanding is, and just to be absolutely clear here, there's no MP who works for a multi-client lobbying company, though there are MPs who work for they work for individual companies. That's not true of peers, by the way. There are some peers who are directors that are well known to me of multi-client lobbying companies. And that's disappeared now since the Nolan Committee from MPs. There were MPs who did that in the 1990s. Obviously, all those interests have to be declared if MPs have commercial interests. Some of my colleagues have suggested that, some have even suggested you shouldn't have any other financial interest if you're an MP. You should just live, for that salary and so on. Does that include journalistic interests or public speaking interests or whatever? Some people have said there should be a cap of, I think in the States there's a cap of so much income you can earn above a level. I myself wouldn't, I think ultimately it's for electors to decide whether they want their MP or not, and I wouldn't myself put a complete ban on MPs having outside interests, so I do think it should be declared, but I do think both MPs and peers shouldn't work for multi-client lobbyists, and that the industry says that is unethical. The two industry organisations say they will not pay MPs and peers. It seems odd that we don't say back what we agree with you, really.